Welcome, wrestling fans, to a new episode of 360 Fanatic Unleashed. Back again with another new episode. In case you haven't heard the newest one, last week where I talked about the first 4 editions of Ring of Honor Final Battle, you can go back and listen to that anytime you want. Also, just recorded an episode of 360 Wrestling Fanatic, episode 335, talking about AEW Dynamite Winter is coming, so check that out. But right here, right now, on this episode of 360 Fanatic Unleashed, I'm going to talk about the documentary from last night that aired on Vice, The 9 Lives of Vince McMahon. It's been talked about for a while, and Vice has had success with, of course, Dark Side of the Ring and Tales from the Territories. So they have had success with these pro wrestling based shows. I remember actually this was supposed to air a little while back, but I think it was one of the weeks when Dynamite had to have a special Tuesday episode of Dynamite. So that did not happen. It got pushed back a little bit, but it finally aired last night. And we start off with early on in his life, where at first he didn't know his dad yet, and then his mom, being a single mother, and him being abused by some of his stepdads. And then, of course, he finding out his father is Vince McMahon Sr. And then the way he first started working for his dad's Worldwide Wrestling Federation, which I have heard this story before. The commentator at the time, I can't think of his name right now, but was giving Vince Sr. some problems, and we're talking about money, was asking for more money, I think, and then he ended up leaving, or either that or Vince Sr. fired him, and then he put Vince Jr. on commentary, and then, of course, he ended up being the commentator for the Worldwide Wrestling Federation, and then bought the promotion from his father. And then they even mentioned Jimmy Snuka, the whole murder trial with Nancy Argentino, which a lot of people say Vince helped cover it up. And, of course, that would end up coming back in the news, where Jimmy Snuka would be arrested, but at the time when he was arrested, he didn't have that long to live, so he didn't go to jail, and he ended up passing away. Also, they covered the John Stossel and Dr. D. David Schultz incident on 2020, I believe it was, one of the ABC News shows, where he asked him if wrestling was fake, and then he ended up slapping him a couple times in his ear. And that's another thing I just want to bring up real quick. Quite a bit of the footage that they used in this documentary was footage actually from episodes of Dark Side of the Ring. Like I just mentioned, the John Stossel incident, and then the plane ride from hell, the steroid trial, the Montreal screw job, the Owen Hart episode. And I mean, that's not really a bad thing, but like, not a bad idea, but like I said, some of the footage and the interviews were from Dark Side of the Ring. And then they discussed the national expansion, how he risked everything with the first WrestleMania. And Hulk Hogan, they talk about Hulkamania, of course. And showed Mr. T, Wendy Richter, Cyndi Lauper, Roddy Piper, the whole WrestleMania Rockin' Wrestling, and WWF's relationship with MTV at the time. And then they discussed Rita Chatterton, who was the first female referee in the WWF, which was known at the time, but then was like kind of forgot about for a while. She did that interview that was talked about on Donahue. They show clips of that. And that's another story, of course, when all the stuff about the hush money came out. This was brought up once again, and a lot of people, like I said, kind of didn't talk about it for a while, kind of forgot about it. A lot of people didn't even know about it. So that was discussed. And another thing, of course, you knew they were going to bring up was the steroid trial, which, again, we see footage from Dark Side of the Ring, the interviews with the former WWE lawyer. I don't think he's with them anymore, right? I don't think he's their lawyer more. Jerry McDevitt. And next up, Bret Hart. We discussed, or they discussed, I should say, Vince McMahon when he bought out Stampede Wrestling, and then the Montreal screw job, and the Monday Night War is also discussed, Raw vs. Nitro, and then Vince buying WCW, and Austin versus McMahon. Of course, that was discussed, and the Attitude Era, the edginess at the time, and Pillman's Got a Gun was another thing that they talked about for a little bit, which was cutting edge at the time, and talked about Owen Hart, the tragedy at Over the Edge in 1999. And again, a lot of this part was from the Owen Hart episode of Dark Side of the Ring. And the plane ride from hell is once again discussed. Like now, the last few things, I'm not surprised that they did bring up in this documentary, but one of the things here now that I really wasn't expecting is they said well, they didn't actually say it, but they talked about some people maybe saying Vince McMahon exploits the deaths of his wrestlers. They bring up Eddie Guerrero, how his unfortunate passing, and then just months later, they kind of involve it in the storyline with Randy Orton and Rey Mysterio. And then there was the very poor taste comment from Randy Orton, which when he said that Eddie Guerrero is in hell. And I agree, that was definitely in poor taste, but I didn't really mind the rest of it, like where Rey Mysterio going into the Royal Rumble, winning it for Eddie, and then going on to WrestleMania 22 and winning the World Championship. But like I said, that comment from Randy Orton, though, was just going too far. And also, they discussed the WWF going public with the stock market and everything. And the PG era is brought up where they toned down from the TV-14 stuff from the Attitude Era with sponsors, Mattel, with the action figures and everything. And then it is more current times at the end, talking about the whole hush money thing and everything. And they talk about how Vince and Linda have actually been separated for a while. And so that was the 9 lives of Vince McMahon. Like I said, I thought it was very interesting. And if you haven't seen it yet, definitely check it out on Vice. If you don't have Vice, maybe you can find it online somewhere. I'm not sure if it is available on YouTube, but I know there has been times before where Vice has posted some of the episodes of Dark Side of the Ring on their YouTube channel. I don't know if this is it or not, but maybe you can check that out. Or maybe on Vice's website if it's on there. I'm not sure if they have the full episodes or not, but they might have it on there. So anyway, just try to check it out if you weren't able to see it yet. And there was a couple things that they didn't discuss. I wouldn't really say I'm surprised that they didn't bring them up, but they were talking about the steroid scandal, of course, but they didn't mention the WBF. Of course, everybody knows it was the World Bodybuilding Federation that Vince tried. They did talk about, though, not exactly that, but they did talk about how Vince tried other things, how he tried the XFL, didn't work out, and the only thing that he has really succeeded in, of course, has been professional wrestling, even though he doesn't consider WWE professional wrestling sports entertainment. So, didn't talk about that. And speaking of sports entertainment, they did mention this when they talked about the thing with WCW where Ted Turner called him up and he said, "I'm getting in the wrestling business." And Vince said to him, "That's good, Ted. I'm in the sports entertainment business." So some of the interviews that were in this documentary of course, had Dave Meltzer, had Jim Cornette, Brian Alvarez, Vince Russo was interviewed for it, Wade Keller, Brandon Thurston from WrestleNomics, who I do know I am familiar with WrestleNomics, but also familiar with him from Post Wrestling, who he did an interview the other day with John Pollock, and also WrestleNomics Radio every Sunday on the Post Wrestling feed. If you haven't listened to that, I definitely recommend checking it out, discussing more of the business side of pro wrestling. I thought his interviews were very good. And Brian Solomon, who wrote a couple good wrestling books. Most recent, I think it was the one that he wrote about the Sheik, which unfortunately I have not read yet, but it does sound very good. I'll have to check that out sometime. And I think that was mostly the main ones who were interviewed for this documentary. And like I said, of course, they did show clips of the interviews from the Dark Side of the Ring episodes. So I thought it was good. I definitely recommend it if you have not checked it out. And also another documentary that Vice has done on pro wrestling was the China one that they have done. That is another one that's worth checking out. And Tales from the Territory, good show. And I'm not sure what the future is of Dark Side of the Ring as of right now. Hopefully it'll be back, but as of right now, nothing has been announced, or at least not that I know of anyway. So that was this new episode of 360 Fanatic Unleashed. Thank you for tuning in, everybody. If you have a suggestion of something you want me to talk about right here on Fanatic Unleashed, email 360wrestlingpodcast@gmail.com. I'll put it in the description as well. It could be a past show you want me to talk about, or a certain wrestler, talk about their career, or maybe any kind of pro wrestling topic. I don't know. Just like thinking off the top of my head right now, maybe some of the best cage matches, ladder matches, who knows, just like any pro wrestling topic that you want me to talk about right here on 360 Fanatic Unleashed, I'll definitely consider it. I'm not promising that I will talk about it, but like if it'll be a good episode, I will. So I'll definitely consider it. Thank you once again. Hopefully we will have a new episode of 360 Fanatic Unleashed coming up soon. But until then, keep listening to 360 Wrestling Fanatic. And I am Lance, and I am a wrestling fanatic.